Hello, everyone, and welcome. I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. As builders and designers, we have a key eye for design. And today's guests have a sharp eye for data that we can use in our businesses. And I'd like to welcome them to our stage today. Today, we are joined by Anna Anderson and Ryan Shute of Southwest Express. They're going to join us today to talk to us about data. Anna, I'm going to take it away and let you present.
Thanks so much, Chantel, for allowing us to be on this webinar. And as you shared, it's a privilege not only to be here, but to be joined by Ryan Shutt, who is the CEO of Southwest Exteriors and brings vast information when it comes to not only marketing, but growing a company strategically. And so welcome, Ryan.
Thanks, Anna. I appreciate it.
Well, we have a lot of information to cover. And as we get going, Ryan, I would like if you could share a little bit about your experience, and then I'll do the same. But talk to us about your journey at Southwest Exteriors and how you've leveraged data to drive growth for the business.
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand. So, while currently being in the CEO role, my background is mainly in call center and marketing for this industry. So I've been in the industry about 18 years, and 16 of those were really responsible. I was the guy responsible for making sure that the phones rang. And I am by no means a creative marketer in the sense that I'm not going to sit down and create you a really cool ad or a great message or a great brand. So for me, it's really the data and the science behind marketing that's super important. And so that's with what we're going to see today is a lot of what I do and how my brain works of going, hey, we can just slap ads out there, we can just be kind of aggressive about being everywhere and for everybody to see us, but how do we really kind of protect our marketing dollars and spend them in a fashion that's very responsible and it's going to get us the biggest ROI on that spend. And so yes, that's really been my role. So is making sure the phones ring and leads come the door. And then about 2 years ago, I moved into the CEO role. So I'm still very heavily involved in the day-to-day marketing. But yeah, so I'm super excited to share with what Anna's going to share with you guys today.
Fantastic. Well, as Chantel works on advancing those slides, let me tell you a little bit about what my role is at Art Unlimited. And so here at Art Unlimited, I have been helping to lead not only the company, but also making sure that we're bringing innovation to the table and constantly evolving and bringing new opportunities to our customers and the market at large. So Art Unlimited has been in business for over 40 years. And in that evolution of providing marketing services, we've really found a sweet spot, a niche within the construction vertical, and understanding the needs of contractors today, and then saying, what do the contractors need for tomorrow? And that's what we're going to talk about. Is we believe there is a significant shift in data-driven marketing and marketing that has a message that resonates. So as we walk through this presentation, again, we're going to dissect and say, okay, what does that shift look like? How do you embrace it? And how do you leverage it for the growth of your business, not only today, but tomorrow? So at the end, we're going to reshare our contact information so that you can reach out to either myself or Ryan directly, because Ryan, I know you and I probably are some of the few that respond to every email, right?
Yes, it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, so I think when we look at data as we dive in, I think it's good to look at what does the state of data look like today for a lot of agencies and in-house marketing teams. We use that tool called Google Trends. And this allows us to see what does the prospective customers' search volume look like. But the catch is this isn't all actual valid users. We could have some bots in here. we could have some research analysts, and they never have any intent to convert. And so these lines across the board is what we would use to be able to say, okay, here's search trends for certain types of topics. And you could see on the top bar, we have this green line that began to have some acceleration of search query volume in 2020. And as I was working with a contractor, we said, okay, we've seen some uptick in this type of search. And this directly correlates to a service that he was looking at embracing in his business. And again, I gave him the caveat that even though this is an uptick, we cannot predict what the conversion ratio is off of this search volume. And so I think that's one of the big gaps that we have been facing and working on breaking down. And we're going to go into how to break that down. So when we look at this search intent, we lean into something where this is, Ryan, where you excel hands down. And it's really beginning to look at, okay, we understand search intent, but now we also have so many more users who are very high up on the funnel in their path to making a decision, and they're engaging with brands and doing research very far before you ever hear from that customer. So talk to us about your philosophy, how you at Southwest Exteriors connect with those customers super high up on the funnel.
Yeah, and so that's the thing is, and my background was much more direct response, so really focused on that bottom of the funnel. In the past, it was my belief, and this has been only the last 3.5, 4 years that my beliefs have changed, is that the website was simply just a conversion tool, right? Get the person on the website, get a name, get a phone number, get a submittal, or get a phone call, and that's it. And what we're finding is, obviously, consumers have changed a lot, whether it be through COVID or other happenings throughout the world. Is we're no longer seeking out the advice of our neighbor as much. So we have more time on our hands. We're spending a lot more time online, and so we're doing more search and more research on the products. And so for me, it's really having my website be truly a learning tool for these people that are top of the funnel, and to really kind of date them right before you ask for marriage. And so it's about creating great quality content that is going to answer those homeowners' questions, prior to deciding to actually convert and say yes to you, to actually give you, their contact information, which is a very, very private thing for them.
Yeah, so I think one of the key things that some people on this webinar may not realize is you don't use third-party lead aggregators. You're driving the growth really from an internal marketing strategy.
Absolutely. And so for me, I want the homeowner to know who they're contacting, who they're interacting with, and not just some arbitrary third party out there that's probably more than likely actually competing with me too, right? To get those same leads I'm very selfish, and I want to be the star, and I want to be the one the homeowner who is actually reaching out to and knows.
Yeah, and so as many contractors look at driving leads and growth, a lot of the lead aggregators, they're up in that space that you were just talking about, Ryan. They're doing a lot of education, and their marketing teams are really aware of the impact. So I think that's a key point as we're looking at how do you be that source of knowledge. It starts that high up on the funnel, especially if you want to build the brand and make sure that you're able to capture those opportunities and not simply pay for them from a lead aggregator where you don't have trust. And so great takeaways. Obviously, this data represents the volume of users who are doing that search prior to engagement. These numbers continue to get higher, and we're seeing users are definitely doing their due diligence to make sure that they're selecting a contractor that fulfills their word and is a knowledgeable source. So, I mean, the data continues to drive home the why of why we need to make sure that we're high up on the funnel. But then we also look at and say, okay, not only are we creating great content, but does that content resonate with your target customer? And is it personalized to how they think, how they buy, and the pain points that they're experiencing. And we all know that luxury brands do this extremely well. But Ryan, you've been in the world of persona and data for years. And you and I've seen firsthand the importance of having the right tone and message just baked within that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, on that note, one of the worst practices we can do as either marketers or business owners is to inquire with our sales team, hey, who should we be marketing to? Right? Because there's going to be a lot of kind of just misrepresentation. They're gonna describe their ideal customer. Obviously, $1 million home. In my case, lots of windows. Super high income. And when we actually dive into the data and we see, hey, who is our ideal client? What is their persona? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? Where are they actually shopping at? What messaging resonates with them? It is in direct contrast to who our sales teams believe is our ideal, customer. And so it's super important for me to actually leverage that data and say, hey, based on the information in my database and my previous clients, like who should I be getting more of, right? What you'll find a lot of times is, there's certain areas that we market in versus others, and going, hey, how do I go find these same like personas in other zip codes? And so for me, that data component is incredibly valuable in order to do that.
Well, I think you hit on something key is so many people, they ask the salespeople for what are those target customers look like and what makes them tick. So that makes a key shift that we need to highlight is when you say, okay, although what the sales team is telling us is important, we need to make that shift to look at who are our customers and what do they look like? And as you said, move and say, okay, where are more of those customers? So the customer modeling is critical. And so there's a couple of different things that everybody should know is the first party data would be the data that's coming out of your CRM, your customer records, and marrying that with third party data. And that's what we're looking at here is there's so many different data sources that we can aggregate and visualize. But the key component is filtering that so that when it comes out the other side, it all has actionable elements that you can drive growth for your company. So either you're going to stop doing something or you're going to start doing something based off the data. And that is where your CRM comes to play. And Ryan, you have worked tirelessly on CRM advancements for not only your company, but a lot of different companies. If you were to say, here's a couple of different things I would recommend when it comes to marketing, what would those three things be? And I'll just give you a quick tee up. I feel like most people say, well, I use my CRM now, but if you have obviously the name, the email address, and the address, they can get by with most things. But I also like to have a little bit more detail on job type, et cetera. Are there any other CRM data points that you feel are must-haves?
Yeah. So for me, the most basic one, and you kind of alluded to it, is capturing it. I think, what I have found in conversations I've had, and even here at Southwest Exteriors, we've struggled with in different seasons, is the importance of going, hey, I've paid for that phone to ring. And so at the very least, I want to capture that information. So even if it doesn't turn into an appointment, right? Even if it doesn't turn into a sale, that is still incredibly valuable information, right? Because, we can tie that record back, as we're looking at our data going, hey, we had several phone calls from this area. We can back into the kind of type of campaigns we were running in those areas or just where we're targeting and going, hey, like our ideal customer is just not there. Right. So the capacity in having your call center be assertive enough to capture that information, regardless of the result of that phone call, for me is key. And like you said too, Anna, finding out the interest, finding out why they're calling. I mean, that's super important too, because that can give you so much information in the future, but it can also give you information to, just better optimize your campaigns in the current. And, are we getting, tons of phone calls for stuff we can't even do? And so, yeah, so the more that you can capture, the better. And, even if your CRM at this point in time, again, I don't know the size of the companies on this phone call, but even if it's a spreadsheet, right, to capture the name, address, phone number, email, whatever you can, interests, how they heard about you. I mean, those components are so crucial. to make sure you can kind of start building out this data and doing more with it.
Awesome. Well, so you just teed up this next slide perfectly, Ryan. And when we look at that data, not only do we want all of those different facets, but the key thing when we're analyzing is what's your area of interest as a business? Where are you today? But yet, where do you want to go? And exporting all the different elements that you shared, Ryan. And then what we do is we begin to visualize that. And so again, let's reflect on what you shared earlier, Ryan, is where are those hot pockets that you're capturing business from today and success? And then how do you model more of those? And what I see the gap in a lot of the marketing strategies that aren't data driven is they're just simply saying, hey, here's our geographical area that we're going to target and the keywords that we're going to target and the types of channels that we're going to be leveraging in order to drive leads. And I'm with this data first model, I'm saying pause. Let's make sure we truly understand the people, the market, and the media they consume. And if we can do that, then let's go in and begin to nurture and drive growth for the business. So a shift from just marketing to saying, let's do data-driven marketing. And we then walk out of the other side with understanding the geography, the personas, and instead of marketing to 100 people, we may only find 27 who are our actual matches. That to me is incredibly exciting because you have maybe the same marketing dollars that you're going to double down in front of those 27 people, or you might be able to reduce your marketing budget because you're more effective. And so that's where that data-driven philosophy comes into play. Now, let me explain this slide, and then Ryan, let's go into a little bit more detail about where those different segments come into play. But what we're looking at is on the left-hand side is a map of Nashville, obviously. And so we're beginning to look at all these different colors and these different blocks. And these colors represent the most dominant persona group that is within that geographical territory. And so across the United States, there's different personas. There's about 300-ish names personas. And obviously you can create your own persona, but what I love is there's so much data that is specified in some of these different personas that gives us a really rich data-driven persona rather than simply one that you sit down in a room and you begin to name all the different characteristics of your dream client, but rather what we're looking at now is not the dream client, but the makeup of the city, state, or small community that you serve. So that's on the left-hand side. Now let's look at the right-hand side. And we have these percentages in this bar chart. And so what this symbolizes is the cumulative sum of percentages of the persona groups for the entire region that we have colored on the left-hand side. And so we see orange has a high dominance as well as the blue color, and then we have kind of a teal. And so as we go further, we're going to discuss the importance of this and how you can begin to say, okay, here's where our customer lives. And that is a key component to be aware of. So Ryan, I'm going to pull on some of your historical knowledge. Before you worked at Southwest Exteriors, your depth in the home service industry is pretty vast, and you had multi-markets and analyzing those multi-markets. Here, what we're looking at is a couple of different markets. And what I see is when you go to new markets, it's helpful to have like personas you can clone and build off of. Or if it's not similar, you have to have a completely different marketing strategy. So what does that look like from a very high level perspective?
Yeah, so I think it positions you much differently, right? Because I mean, without the data, right, you're reliant on what people feel, what they think. You're literally, whoever you may hire as your, general manager in that area as you're rolling it out. You're relying on, again, his opinion and his thoughts on where your ideal client actually, lives and exists. And so, with how expensive marketing is, nowadays, I mean, this level of data is so crucial because you don't have to rely on opinions, thoughts, and feelings. You can go and say, hey, here is where our ideal customer exists. Like, let's go get them. And so you cut out that huge learning curve of wasted money, of wasted dollars, marketing in areas that aren't going to yield you an ROI. And so, yes, I mean, for me, it's incredibly, valuable. And I did not have this data when I was overseeing multiple markets, unfortunately, and it would have been way freaking easier. That's for sure.
Ah, data has definitely evolved over time. That is for sure. So let's look at the slide called Customers Media Ecosystem. And this is where we begin to understand where do people work, where do they live, where do they play, where do they buy, and how do they learn. To me, this is critical because so many times we just talk about what media do we feel like they are consuming. And when we can answer these questions, this is where we have a lot of depth. And so I also see this shift, Ryan, of where most business owners feel like they are at the center of the spoke, but in reality, your client is at the center of that experience. And so that's why I put them here in this large red dot. But all the different blue bubbles represent the different touch points and media that those clients are consuming. And you are one of the solutions providers that is able to then be part of their decision-making process. So let's break down again, where do they work, live, play, buy, and learn? So on the next slide, what we see is the pain point identification is, you know what? No one really does care how much you know until they know how much you care. And it sounds contradictory, but I can truly understand, Ryan, when you care about me and my experience and the windows in my home and the renovations that you're having. And I can also tell if a contractor doesn't care. And I think it's those subtle nuances that really make a huge difference. And as you're growing Southwest Exteriors, talk to me about how you show your customers you really care.
Yeah, so I think obviously at the core of everything is trust, right? So how do you build trust? And I think there's, competing opinions in our industry of what that looks like. So my background, prior to my kind of epiphany 4 years ago, was like you have to like poke at the fear, right? You have to uncover the fear, you have to lean into the fear. And so, we're really, doing basically, fear-based buying to where, you're basically scaring the homeowner into, hey, you've got to replace your roof or else you've got to replace your windows or else. Well, here's the thing, right? That fear already exists, but that fear exists in the form of, I have no idea who to choose. Like I hop on Google, I hop on whatever it is. There are 30 roofing companies. Like how do I select? How do I actually choose the right one? And so for me, it's being very clear in your messaging of going, hey, how am I as a business owner going to come alongside of you and help you through this process, right? And so, we always talk about, hey, whether you choose us or not, like at least have us come out because our desire is to educate you and help you make the right decision. So that alone breaks down that barrier and it builds immediate trust. So going, hey, these guys aren't here to scare me, right? They're not here to freak me out or pressure me. They are here to walk alongside of me in this decision process and make sure I make the best solution for not only my home but my family. And because again, that fear already exists. As people don't know about windows, they don't know about roofing, so they're relying on a company to tell them. And a lot of times in the past, I've taken advantage of that and really used fear to drive that decision versus be really acting more as a guide for them.
So I think that's the first time we touched on that topic of we're not addressing the fear, but rather we are a guide for them. And that is a lot of people's strategy where they say, hey, let's address the fear. And coming alongside as the guide is where not only do you win the work, in my opinion, I've given personally a lot of work to people when they have come alongside as the guide, but I am also more likely to refer customers to or prospective customers to that business because they don't have those fear tactics. They are focusing on really being the guide and empowering the customer to make decisions. I love that. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, and I think one important thing too to point out, with the data, right? I mean, again, to be able to identify your personas and how these homeowners buy and what messaging resonates is, that those same pain points and those what they're concerned about are going to be different for each of these personas. And so to be able to target and have the best effective message to them is critical to using this data the right way as well.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about the generational learning styles. And this is where the persona reporting and data-driven marketing comes into play. Because when we're able to analyze who are your customers, we get insights such as this, where what I find is the business owner will say, hey, I love that content. It really resonates with me, or I'm going to write my content for my business. That happens, not all the time, but there's a lot of businesses that'll write their content. It makes sense to them. But then I always ask, let's hit the pause button. Does this content make sense to your customers? And that's where sometimes we have a gap where the business owner might be a baby boomer or a Generation X, and their target customer is a millennial. And all of a sudden, we have this communication messaging gap where we're talking in one form and addressing pain points that we feel this generation has, when in reality, our customer is different. And so I think it's important to embrace the data and the knowledge that you can glean from your customers' data, again, first-party data, to have a shift. And possibly your content's on point, but shifting that message and making sure that it resonates with your customer. And, as we go into this, Ryan, you're a man that is strongly believes in the right message, and you create a lot of video content. How do you leverage? We'll talk more about video in the future, but not only video, but also your written content. And how do you take some of those different generational nuances to interweave and say, hey, when we're creating content, here's how we know it can be leveraged and used so that it resonates?
Yeah, so a couple thoughts on that, right? So to your initial point, kind of where you started off with it, is, in Donald Miller's book, Story Brand, he breaks it down so beautifully in the sense that as business owners, we have an understanding of our business at a 10 out of 10, right? And we typically think that, hey, if we explain it at a 7, like the masses are going to understand that. And we couldn't be more wrong, right? We have to be explaining that at a level of a 2 in order for the masses to understand that. So that's one thing as far as complexity. So that, for me, regardless of the persona, we have to go in with that mindset. And so as far as leveraging the data, for me, it's having the proper, filters and navigation on your content, because, we have a lot of people buy from us that are engineers, right? And the reason why is because we have that level of content to where it's very technical and it's a very data driven. And so engineers love that level of data, but I also have to have articles for the people that are, less analytical thinking and going, hey, this is the best solution for your home because, hey, this is the most popular color. This is the most popular style right now. And so to have that level of content on your website is critical because, again, you like Anna's saying, you have to have content for the masses because not everybody's going to communicate the same. Now, again, you can tailor that content of knowing, hey, not a whole lot of alphas are in are owning homes at this point in time, right? I mean, if they did, they're, it's very unique, obviously. And so I'm not looking to target them. And so whatever the bulk of my personas are showing, I want to communicate to them, but I also have to have other content too, knowing that, some people are cycling out of these personas, some people are cycling in the new ones. And so those multiple, communication points have to be on the website from a content standpoint, but also as far as activities on the website, for stuff for them to do. Again, a website is no longer just simply a conversion tool. You're getting them in the funnel. So whether it be content that is, a buyer's guide, or whether it's a pricing tool, or whether it's a design tool where they can, get design ideas or pictures, it's like all those points on your website are so critical to speak to not only different personas, but the different personality types as well.
Yeah, Ryan, you brought up a book that we all know and love is Storybrand. So, great resource. Well, here's where we go a little bit deeper. And when we identify and we say, okay, here's our personas, and you're talking about that content creation process, I see that there's this shift and a deeper, more valuable connection that you're able to make with these homeowners and or property owners. And we have the ability to say, okay, based off this market profile, how are we going to create experiences that resonate? How are we going to go into that conversation, not only from a marketing perspective, from a sales perspective as well? And we're going to have some visibility to maybe some of their net worth, to the value of their home on a high level scale. And then, are these types of users looking at health related issues, or are they more out and about and they like to travel? So here's all the different subsets that we're able to drill in on when we really get deep and we start looking at the specific persona details that's driving the growth for your business. And I think that's one of the exciting things when we look at data driven marketing, looking at that data first, we're able to see a lot of cool statistics. Now, Ryan, you and I talked a lot about this. And not only do we have the market profile of the customer, but then we also have this element that so many of us in our business and our past experiences, professional experiences, here in the US, we think of linguistics as an English first experience. And we have a lot of changes happening across the US. And there's multiple different languages, key influencers who their primary language may not be English. And so data allows us to understand what does that look like? And how are you looking at do you change the model of Southwest Exteriors? Do you have a bilingual team members, and what does that pathway look like?
Yeah, so this is an area that's really critical, right? Because I think, again, our stubbornness as, folks who run business or market, it can be our biggest enemy sometimes. And so, having a business that's in San Antonio, our market here is 64% Hispanic. And, it has been a complete and total miss historically that we haven't had, a Spanish version of our website. We have not had, bilingual reps in our call center, bilingual sales reps, that are going into homes, having both, English and Spanish version of our contracts. And so that stuff we're currently, catching up on, because again, it's a total miss. And, I think it's something to be very, very aware of for business owners out there, to know, hey, what is not only the best vehicle to communicate to my customers on, but what language, what tone, what messaging. And so yeah, it's a huge component of it. And it's very easy to miss, based on our own personal bias.
I think you also brought up something key. When we talk about marketing, you need to make sure that if you're going to offer a diversity of language options, make sure that you provide a seamless experience from start to finish, as seamless as possible, right? You reference the contracts, you reference the installers, and some of those different pieces where, I shouldn't say it's very easy. It's becoming easier through AI to have some of these different tools available, but you really have to do even a mock scenario of, okay, if we're going to roll this out based off the data, we need to set up a test project and just kind of walk through and say, okay, so from marketing, do we have good linguistic representation? From a customer service, from the contract signing to the installation to the, I don't know, sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not, even to the billing. So depending on the scalability of your business, this may be possible, or you may just pick a couple of different areas where you're going to really hone in on and say, that's where we can be great when it comes to our language diversity. And then we're just going to be transparent that it hasn't rolled out through the entire company. So great point there.
No, absolutely. I just think about it from a client experience. There would be no worse client experience than having a website in Spanish, having them call in and then not speaking Spanish. Right.
Yeah,
So we've got to think of that kind of stuff.
right. Yeah, I see some business owners go, "Oh, that's an easy box to check. Like, let's just AI everything
Totally.
to change the marketing into a different language," and yet they forget the next steps could be hindered by not fulfilling what that initial experience was. All right.
Absolutely.
So now we understand a little bit. There's a lot of additional data that can go into those personas because we just kind of scratch the surface. But what I think the key component is when we look at that data driven marketing is once we understand the persona, this is kind of crazy, scary, but also super cool. We can understand the media that is being consumed by the users in those markets. And you can go even deeper as far as what is the media that's being consumed by those different individuals. And so this allows us to really pivot with accuracy and say, okay, here's how we're going to buy, here's how we're going to invest our media. So that's where I want to go next is we truly understand the data collection. We understand some more about the persona and geography analysis. Now let's go into that marketing strategy and execution because, man, Ryan, this is where there's a lot of flex. And let's start with social. So we all have seen that start of where when we start our business, we go, okay, we need to get on this social platform and that social platform. But as social continues to evolve, and I see, these changes where TikTok is accelerating, and we used to have Twitter, and now we have X. And so, um, Ryan, you're very active and just social, but you said, you know what? There's always growth opportunities Southwest Exteriors can take when you're looking at leveraging social to another dimension. So as you look forward, how do you look at data such as this and say, okay, here's how I'm going to make some of those decisions?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not sure I can really explain the how as much as the fact that you just have to. Right. I mean, it goes back to what I said earlier with how expensive marketing is and how expensive lead acquisition is you cannot be fearful. I mean, I've known Anna for a lot of years now. And I mean, there was no bigger person that was against social media than me. I did not like it. I did not see the vision for it long term. I did not see where it was going. And so I was behind on that. And so I think for me now, it's understand that, hey, I'm never going to be behind on something again. And so it's how do I stay in front of that and data like this, as far as, where your clients are, but also looking at the personas too, that, that may not be in the buying, in the buying funnel yet, because they're maybe too young. Like where are they going? What are they leaning? And how do you start getting ahead of those platforms? TikTok being one of them, in other platforms. And, now with AI, understanding, hey, where is AI going to take us from a marketing perspective? How can we leverage that as a tool to make us more efficient, to create more content? And so, yes, I mean, this data for me is critical to make sure that you're putting your dollars, where your consumers actually are.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the key thing that you referenced, Ryan, is you have to test things as they come out, but monitor the data. How much are those different media channels being engaged with by your business? So you have the ability to say, okay, our customers are there. We need to press in more, or our customers aren't there. And so we're just going to have an existence on this platform. We're going to secure it for brand management. But when your customers are there, I think this is one of the key things. And this is one of our clients here at Art Unlimited, where when we began to infuse a persona and data driven first model into their social channels, what we saw was an increase across the board. And one of the easiest charts to track is how is the growth of your followers happening. And last thing you want to do is buy those followers, right? That's definitely an old tactic of the days gone past. But we rather want to engage and bring into the fold people who are in the communities that you serve and continue to have those users stay with your brand. So you're going to have some people come and go, but over time, are you growing or are you stagnant or are you declining? And as this report shows, the data-driven persona related content, it resonates. It's just simply a no-brainer. So when we drill into the data and looking at who your customers are and what is the makeup of the individuals within the community that you serve, we're able to do some modeling such as this, where we can look at what are the types of jobs or employment that your customers and prospective customers have today. That to me gives us a great ability to begin to craft content, not only that's relevant to the persona that they are, but also I understand that somebody who's in some of these different roles that we've highlighted here with these green arrows are going to make decisions different than someone who's in a sales role, right? And so Ryan, I view you as one of the kings of content. And as you create that content strategy and you drill in deep into video as a company, how do you leverage and say, okay, here's our data, here's who our people are, and we're not just asking our sales team for what are the common related questions, but we're going farther up on the funnel. Talk to us a little bit about that they ask you answer type of concept when it comes to content process.
Yeah, so really what it is, it's identifying very simply, what are the most common questions, that homeowners ask. And so, that they ask you answer methodology, which I'll spare the soapbox conversation on that, but it really focuses on, what they call the big five, right? And so what we do, and I'll explain what they are in a minute, is we look at it and go, hey, what are the most common questions and what categories do they fall within, right? And so for us, it's really looking at those big five. And so the big five and the way that we kind of the way we structure our content and our questions is, first of all, the most uncomfortable one, which is price, right? Most homeowners are going to your website to figure out price. Now, it doesn't mean that you give them the exact price, but it means you talk about price, like stuff that impacts the price, what's going to make something less expensive, what's going to make something more expensive. And again, also ranges are very, very important. If you guys go to my company's website, southwestexteriors.com, you'll see under our products and services, we've got a pricing calculator for windows. We've got a pricing calculator for siding. And so we're getting ready to launch one for paint and for doors as well. And so homeowners want to know that. So price is the first one, right? The next one that we write content on is what we call verses. And so those articles and those videos do very, very well for us. And so it's very simply looking at two different product lines, right? So for us, it may be a Pella window versus a Provia window. And it's just identifying the pros and cons. It's not picking a winner per se, but it's saying, hey, if you're in the market for this type of window, then, you may want to go with this. If you're in the market for this type of window, you may want to go with the other one. And it's really pointing out the pros and cons, right? The other one is problems, right? And so what are the most common problems? It may be the most common problem with a product line. It may be the most common problem with, hey, when you replace your siding, here's the most common problems that actually occur. So that's another big one. The fourth one that we look at are reviews. And so that could be a review from a couple of perspectives. It may be, what homeowners are saying about you, and, as far as customer journeys that they actually go on, but it's also reviewing products. So very similar to the versus, but it may be saying, hey, we're going to highlight just the Pella window. And here's the pros, here's the cons, here's why you would select it, here's why you wouldn't. So we've got price, versus, problems, reviews. And the last one is what we call the best of. And so this one is very, very hard for a lot of business owners to understand. But our number one performing article that gets me the most leads is if you look at window replacement San Antonio, our article typically pops up third to fourth in organic. And it is a top 6 window replacement companies in San Antonio, and I'm not one of them, right? And so that tends to blow people's minds, but it's all about back to being unbiased. And so those best of articles do very, very well because people want to know, hey, what are my options and what are the best? But again, I win that article every time because they're already on my website. So Those are the big five that we kind of build all of our content around, Anna.
Well, I love that you shared the process and kind of how you say, okay, here's our content pillars, is what we would call it here at our agency. And that gives you a lot of different ways to weave in the personas, to talk about how to solve that pain. And ultimately, go back to what you shared earlier, is be the guide and guide those users in a very professional manner through their experience. Well, so let's make a little bit of a shift and let's talk about the cost and time for transportation across the board. And through data, we're able to understand how mobile are these users when it comes to their transportation needs. And are we very mobile? Does radio make sense? Does streaming um, media consumption make sense? And so, Ryan, your background in radio is rich, but together we've worked on different campaigns. And what I would say is making sure that the brand is represented by a champion is key. But most importantly, making sure that your brand is represented on a channel that your customers are consuming, because we can see that this is in a portion of Texas right near you, Ryan, and the Texans are really mobile. And so understanding that portion gives you visibility, say, hey, we probably should put some media dollars towards some type of content that is consumed when a user is in a mobile state.
So you cut it real quick there, Anna. Say that question again. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just saying, how have you seen the power of radio come into play in the growth of Southwest Exteriors and just beyond? You've run so many different campaigns.
Yeah, so I mean, radio, believe it or not, I mean, a lot of people think radio is dead, but it's still one of my favorites. It does very, very well. You can get a very high frequency and a very high reach, for that. And so it doesn't mean, again, we don't test out other platforms. I mean, we've tested out streaming, we've tested out, you know, um, Pandora, other platforms. But again, when we effectively measure those results, we come back to still, some of the traditional broadcast formats, are the best. But again, this data and the persona data really gives that information as far as, hey, are they still reading magazines? Are they, reading newspapers? And so, we still stay very active with having a very broad marketing mix. But again, to understand where to spend and how to spend, really, is broken down very, very well in this level of reporting.
Well, I feel like you teed this up so well, Ryan, and it's really understanding what is the media consumption that's occurring for the region that you're serving. And here's a very high level assessment of from radio ads that we were just talking about to TV to magazine, mobile ads on your device, as well as newspaper. And so many people say, oh, this is old school. And I think sometimes, especially in the many different places that people can consume media, we forget that sometimes old school does work in today's experience. And then we also are able to look at what are the media facts and what is the consumption. Orange is less than national average, blue is greater than national average. And so this type of report, I like to joke internally, it's almost like Santa Claus's list, where we have multiple different media consumption forms. And from a media buying perspective, it allows us to truly understand with accuracy the users in the area that you serve. And the personas, what are they actually consuming? And this is a completely different visibility than what most people have. If they do the data driven first, you have this type of accuracy to be able to say, okay, we're going to look at streaming media options. And maybe OTT hasn't worked for you in the past, but by looking at this in such a specific fashion, we now have a much deeper understanding of where those users are, rather than just saying, hey, we're going to do over the top streaming media and it falls flat. So let's buy with greater accuracy when we do those media buys. Let's buy with greater accuracy when we're doing our radio campaigns, and the list goes on. And I think that's the huge win of understanding who your customers are, modeling them, looking at growth opportunities for your market, and then saying, okay, what's the media that they're actually consuming? And you're able to be more accurate with your ad spend as well as your messaging. So I referenced the OTT slash over the top as well as some traditional TV campaigns. And Ryan, you referenced, OTT hasn't been a key player for you in the past. And I know with Southwest, we're redoing some of this modeling now with the data-driven media consumption, but so that you can run some of those specific tests. But you've had success with TV in the past, and it's driven a lot of growth for you. How do you weave in and say, okay, if I'm going to invest in TV, which is by no means cheap, the channel selection and understanding who those users are, what have been some of your deciding factors?
Yeah, so really two things. So first of all, I do want to touch on the OTT because I know that it is very, a very hot topic, and it's one of those things where obviously the data shows us unequivocally that more and more people are cutting cords and moving to streaming. And so for me, it is doing continued control test for streaming and going like, hey, like I've got to figure it out, right? I mean, we have to figure out streaming because that's where all the data shows us that the consumer's going. And so I want to make sure I want to be very cautious about, discouraging people from OTT. I just myself haven't figured it out, yet to where it truly shows a great ROI. We're still active there, but again, it's in small amounts, and we're doing just very detailed testing. And again, this persona data allows us, because that's the beauty of OTT, is that you can be much more targeted than broadcast, right? Broadcast, you're just casting a very broad net, into the marketplace. So again, this is by no means a knock on OTT because it's where we need to be. But with broadcast, I mean, there's all kinds of data that again with broadcast that aligns with the personas and lets us know, hey, where are our personas actually watching, TV? Again, it goes back to the assumptions I talked about at the first part of the meeting, which was, we have these perceptions about who our customer is, but if we're wrong on that, we're very likely going to advertise in the wrong station and the wrong shows. And so by having this persona data before you go to a TV station is very, very valuable, because you can say, hey, here's exactly who we're trying to reach. Where are these people at? What shows are they watching? What channels are they watching the most of? And so again, leveraging that data that, the Nielsen ratings really gives us is incredibly valuable to saying, hey, I want to buy TV on this station, and I want to buy in these shows, these day parts, in this level of frequency. And so, just on TV specifically, for me, it's very, very important to own a station before you try to, branch out and go, hey, I want to try, the three major networks and try to spread my marketing dollars across there. Identify the station that has the most of your persona there, and then max out your spend there before you go on to a second one.
So that's a key component, as well as making sure you own the channel. But then also you referenced, OTT hasn't worked for you in the past, but there's shifts that are happening. And I think that speaks to something we haven't talked about yet, is this data is constantly refreshing, right? Consumer patterns are always changing. So making sure that you're refreshing this data with a provider on a frequent basis. It may make sense for some people to do it on a 6-month basis, on a 12-month basis, on a 2-year basis. But you need enough time in between those data refreshes to make sure that, hey, were you able to deploy those campaigns? Were you able to measure results and then continue to adjust based off of performance? So just a couple of things that I wanted to bring out. Now, we have done persona blueprints for a variety of different clients here and leverage this data internally at our agency to help drive growth. And I think it's important to cite, what does some of that growth look like? And so this is a recent report from a client that was able to directly attribute that growth from the data-driven marketing strategy. And so this client had a blend of in-house and agency-driven marketing strategies. And I think that's really exciting is depending on how your business works. Ryan, you have a lot of similarities there. Like you have some agency delivered marketing campaigns and others are managed in-house. Persona driven reporting and media consumption data can really bridge that gap and keep everybody driving down the same lane rather than everybody saying, hey, here's the company, and they cascade and they do a bunch of different messages. But when this company that we're looking at, the growth of 85% year over year website traffic was increased, everybody on all channels was driving down the same lane, same target customer, same target geography. They all took different channels based off of the data, and kaboom, they're having a fantastic year. So that really excites me when you bring everybody together and they understand the game plan and they're charging down the same lane.
Yeah, because I think something
So
that's not captured real quick, Anna, sorry. So,
yeah,
something that's not captured in here, right, is, to leverage that persona data to then build a brand guide and brand messaging is critical, right? Because I am a fan of leveraging both external and internal resources for marketing. But again, if there's not a playbook, then you're going to get two different playbooks on how they're messaging. So using this persona data to build, a brand message, a brand guide, and brand strategy is very, very critical.
yeah, hands down. So here's where we get to the full picture, right? We have an awareness of the media that's being consumed. We are implementing it, we're measuring it, and we're continuing to nurture that process. And so I think that's the critical component is this isn't a one-time, I did that, I saw it, and now we're implementing and we don't need to do it again, but it's a constant evolution. And so through this process, here's where we see those different bubbles and points of which the client, your client, can interact with your brand. And so now when they see your brand at the top of the funnel, they see it when they work, they see it wherever they're living, how they play, how they buy, and how they learn. You're engaging with them on all these different levels. So you're truly becoming what Ryan again referenced at the beginning is you're becoming that guide and a solutions provider rather than just a contractor. And I think that's where great brands are built and they stand the test of time. And so we did want to say, hey, we have want to put out there if there's questions that you may have about this. Ryan and I are happy to answer those questions. If you want to drop them in the chat, we're happy to take those questions here and now. But I think there's just so many different pieces that can come into play and really make accurate decisions when you look at a data-driven marketing strategy. So as we wait for a question or two to come in, Ryan, any other thoughts that you wanted to make sure we shared before we end here?
It's a great question, and I should have been better prepared for it. No, I think it's very simply just again, and I think I've said this will be the third time I've said it, is marketing is getting more and more competitive. It's costing more and more every year to get leads out the door. And so for me, this is very simply being a good steward of your company's money and, making sure that you're spending dollars where they need to go and to leverage the data. So it's not, hey, I think my ideal customers here, I think this is the message is going to resonate with them, to cut out that think and say, hey, I know where my ideal customer is and I know where they're buying. I know what messaging is going to resonate with them. Like you're so far ahead of the competition by doing that.
Yeah. And I think the key thing that everybody's looking at is their budgets and how are they going to plan for 2025. This helps you plan with accuracy. The cost of lead, as you shared, is continuing to go up. So making sure that you understand all the different aspects and that data-driven first model truly allows you to turn from how you see the market landscape to looking at the landscape of your territory that you serve and through the lens of all your customers, through the lens of your team, and you can create a cohesive, strong strategy. And that's what excites me and says, okay, we can go from the strategy of yesterday and transition with confidence into the strategy of tomorrow. So I don't see any fresh questions that have come in that haven't been answered through naturally through our conversation. But if you have questions for either myself or Ryan, and even for Chantel and the Cadsoft team, I know you probably have their contact information, but just in case, here's our contact information. Because again, Ryan and I, we're both fanatics about responding to those emails. Sometimes we get back to them right away. Sometimes because of our travel schedule, it takes us a little bit of time, but you will always hear back from us. So thank you to everybody. Thank you, Ryan, for being on today's webinar. And thank you, Chantel, for this opportunity.
No problem, Anna. Thank you, everyone. And for everyone, we will be recording. We have recorded the event, and it will be on our Cadsoft channel. So if you wanted to review all of the data, because there was so much great information presented today, make sure to come back and check that out on our channel. We will be following up with an email to each and every one of you so that you have a direct link to that as well. So thank you, Anna and Ryan, for visiting us today and presenting this great information. It was fantastic, and I'm sure everyone enjoyed it. So thanks, everyone. I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye-bye, everyone.